You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. Carry on, don't fear the fall, 'cause you'll get over heartache. Let it go as time moves on. Yes, you'll get over heartache.
Good evening, St. Lucia, and welcome to yet another episode of What's Happening Now with Laura. I must apologize for not having been with you last week, but sometimes these things cannot be helped. When you are ill, when your family is ill, when your coworkers are ill, sometimes you just need a break. Unfortunately, we only have the one producer who's doing this show with us, and when he's ill, we just have to let him rest. You know, there's this killer flu going around, and I advise every and anybody to be very careful with your health. Take your health very seriously. Adhere to all the warnings that the Ministry of Health is issuing out, because let me tell you something. When I hear men are dying because of this flu, when I hear H1N1, when I hear swine flu, I get very, very worried. I had a little bout of the flu a few weeks ago, and let me tell you something. It is the devil to get rid of. You know, it is the devil to get rid of. It leaves you with this residual cough, you know, that just won't go away. So don't play with fire, you know, you just take care of yourself so that you don't catch this flu. A few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I had with me as my guest Ruth Sinclair, and we were talking about sexy leadership. And we were talking about this book. The basis of the show was about this book, and a number of you called in or WhatsApp to me and told me that you wanted to get your hands on a copy of this book. I'm letting you know that the books are now available at DBS's studio. So those of you I promised to keep a copy for, the books are available. It's $40. So if you know yourselves. If you know that I promised to hold back a copy of the book for you, you can now collect it at the DBS studios. Just come in with proper ID, and yeah, you can collect your book for $40. Now, there's a lot that we could talk about, but I think the talk about talk is talk last week. You know the talk on talk, the Ubaldus Raymond talk. Yes, right. So a lot of you have been asking me to give my feedback on that, and my feedback has been what it has always been, that Mr. Raymond served, as we now know, we can now say served, at the behest or at the pleasure of the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia had a decision to make. He had to decide for himself and his party whether Mr. Raymond was a liability or of a sufficient asset that he could keep him in his camp, keep him in his cabinet, because as we know, elections are around the corner, maybe a year and a half, 2 years away. And he had that decision to make. I was not about to advise the Prime Minister. Only the Prime Minister could make that decision. He is the head of his party, and he's also the head of state in St. Lucia. And he had to make a decision whether the job that Mr. Ubaldus Raymond was doing for the country of St. Lucia, whether it was sufficiently of high quality that he could overlook all of the side chatter and all of the salaciousness and all of the scandal that has been surrounding Mr. Raymond for the last 2 years or so. And he had to make that decision, and I trust that he made that decision based on the investigation that he promised that he would have undertook, and all of what Mr. Raymond himself said on that talk, you know, that damning talk. Having said that, I'd like to tell you, St. Lucia, my personal feeling on this thing is anytime there's a scandal, whether it is within the opposition camp or whether it is within the government itself, the reigning administration, the only people who suffer are the citizenry. And I'll tell you why. One of two things happens when you have a situation like this. The opposition or the opposing factors, not necessarily the opposition as we know, as in this case, the St. Lucia Labour Party. The opposition or the opposing factors are so busy slaying and condemning and excoriating that they're not doing a sufficient job of the checks and balances that are required for government to work in the most optimum fashion. And what do I mean by that? If you're busy talking about Eubaldus Raymond and how he is scandalous and how he did this and how you did that, you are not attending to the business of the country. You as opposition, you as opposing factors are supposed to be the checks and balance that keeps government, the administration in check. Right? You're the ones that you're supposed to be, that's guidelines. You're supposed to be guiding, and you're supposed to be saying, no, I disagree with this because, and you're not supposed to do it like this because, and if you're not adhering and you're not consulting and there's no consensus, here is what we're going to do. If you're busy with the smoke and mirrors, you can't be attending to the business of the nation. And if the government, the administration, which is in power, is busy defending itself, defending its members, it cannot attend to the business of the nation. And so I have a serious problem with that. And I think that this investigation needed to move very, very swiftly, and a resolution come to in a quick and an orderly fashion. I think this is what has happened here. I think the investigation happened, and whether Mr. Eubaldus Raymond was asked to resign or whether he resigned, the fact of the matter is he's out. And there can be no more speculation whether Rick was right, whether the talk was right, whether the non-talk was right, whether the slander was right, whether the slap that you get over here and the slap that you get over there was right or not. The fact of the matter is the matter has been put to rest and it has been squashed. Now, I have something to say to the holier than thou people. And I'm not bashing Mr. Raymond, and I'm not supporting Mr. Raymond in any way, shape, or fashion. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Raymond, I've known him before he decided to come back to St. Lucia and join the political foray once more, and he has been nothing but good to me. Whenever I needed research in a certain area, he was always forthcoming. Anytime I asked for his assistance, he always was forthcoming. So the gentleman that I know is at variance with the gentleman that is at the heart of this scandal. Having said that, I have nothing against Mr. Raymond whatsoever. However, when you are a member, a political figure, or a public figure, you are nothing more than just a regular person who has a spotlight on you almost 24/7. You're just a regular person. Our political figures, our politicians come from our neighborhoods, they come from our communities, they come from our families, they come from our homes. So when we are holding up these politicians to a higher than high standard and we put them on pedestals and we say that they're supposed to be these paragons of virtue and that they're supposed to be these paragons that are held up for our children, and they're supposed to be beacons, and they're supposed to be examples of excellence and of virtue and of ethic. Ask yourself one question: what are you, Mr. Teacher, Mr. Doctor, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Minister of the cloth, or whatever your position is, what are you doing to convey these very same ethics and these very same virtues that you expect of the ministers who are politicians, or the men rather, who are politicians? What are you doing to contribute to society? What are you doing to contribute to that image, that squeakier than clean image that we aspire our children to look up to? Let me give you an example. I'm not sure if it is queued in yet, but I'll explain it to you. Somebody sent me an ad. Somebody sent me an ad. And it reads, the Micoud Secondary School presents Jazz on the Lawn White Edition. And on that ad, it has Sly, Pumwewe, VTB, which I assume is Viet Cuisine Boys. It has the date Friday, May 3rd, 2019, from 10 a.m. at the school. And if my memory serves me right, May 3rd is not a holiday, it's a school day. So it starts from 10 a.m. at the school, and tickets cost $5 for children and $10 for adults. And there are going to be all of these performing artists, including Shane Ross and Young C and MK and Umba and a whole lot more. And that's fine. And that's fine. It's on the screen. And that's fine. What I don't understand is the two young ladies who have the bum bums cock up in the air, mate, like we would say in our local parlance. What does that have to do with jazz? First and foremost, yeah. So in the Caribbean, we have very little purists of the jazz genre of music. And so a lot of the jazz that we've come to learn and to love is more of a jazz fusion. I get that. I love it. Absolutely love it. But these two young girls, the caricatures, which represent young women, whether young girls or young women, and I'm assuming young girls because it is a school event, having the bum bums cock up in this pum pum shorts and brassieres, it's not a cheerleading competition or anything. They have all of their bare riffs and everything exposed, and it is a school event on a school day where children are invited with the general public adults. You could have all sorts of perverts. You could have all sorts of pedophiles. You have no way of filtering who is coming to this event. Now, when this is what the school has sanctioned to draw patrons to the schoolyard, where there are hundreds of vulnerable children, because these children at school, they are the most vulnerable of our society. So when you use this and put it back on screen, I want the whole of St. Lucia to see this. When you have this as your drawing power to get patrons to come into the school, I ask of you, the administrators of the Micoud Secondary School, what are you portraying? What is the standard of your school? Because let's face it, every principal, vice principal, and administrator of every school, whether it's primary school, secondary school, tertiary level education, you are the eyes, the ears, and the mouthpiece of the Ministry of Education. When you sanction and you say this is okay to go out with the name of your school on it, you are saying de facto that the Ministry of Education has sanctioned this. They have vetted it and they have approved it. Is this what we are saying on a school day? That we are exposing our children to, and yet still we want to go on a side and look at everybody else, whereas we have logs in our eyes. We don't think. Who are the administrators of this school who looked at this ad and said it was okay to go out there? Yes, I know I sound like I am on a soapbox this evening, and I sound like I am evangelizing, but I have to, because that's the only language we understand in this country. I am not saying by any means that what Mr. Raymond did is right. Right or wrong, the fact of the matter is a crime has been committed. He was having a private conversation with someone and it was recorded. Last I checked, that was illegal. Anything else that may have come out as a result of those tipped conversations, this illegal activity, we have to ask ourselves, does the ends justify the means? Does the end justify the means? And if it does, then Mr. Raymond has to pay a bigger price than just resigning. And I hope that the investigation that was conducted will clarify all of this, because we still don't know what the result of the investigation is. And we do not even know whether the investigation has been completed. And that is the reason why Mr. Eubaldus Raymond has decided to resign. The fact of the matter is he has resigned and there's an investigation going on. But we are busy pointing fingers. We are busy pointing fingers and saying he was wrong. The man this, the man that. But look at what. Let's see it again. Look at what is being passed off as a school event. And this is not the first time. This is not the first time, and I dare say it will not be the last time. I remember another white edition party that was supposed to be happening on another school grounds, and bum-bums were gyrating, and skirts were lifting up, and it was a meat sandwich, one girl between two, and we say it's the culture. The culture, my ass, excuse my French, sorry little children who are listening, because this is not typically me. The culture, my foot. You know what I'm saying? We're busy doing all sorts of things in the culture, but as soon as men and women who are consenting, by the way, decide to portray the culture in living color, we have a problem with it, and we start pointing fingers, and all of a sudden we are holier than thou. But it don't melt in our mouths, and we don't step on ants. We receive Holy Communion every Sunday with a clean and bright heart. Or we go to church every Saturday, we go to service every Saturday, and we say, praise God, I'm saved. I haven't sinned at all. I mean, that's the hypocrisy. This is the hypocrisy I'm talking about. On the one hand, we have everybody castigating the man, rightly or wrongly. Not me to judge. But this is what is coming out. This is the smut that is coming out of our schools. Sanctioned by the Ministry of Education, by extension. The administrators cannot tell me that though you may give children creative license to do something, to create something, that you are not going to supervise them and say, guys, we cannot have this out. It is ridiculous. This is a school day, right? During school hours, you're inviting the general public, have something that is more wholesome. I am all for the arts. I love dancing. I love singing. Singing may not love me back, but I love singing. I love dancing. I love entertaining. I love entertainment of most sorts. But this cannot be right. There's a time and a place for everything, and this ad, is the wrong message being sent out to our children and to our general public in a time when we say we are looking for examples of virtue. We are looking for paragons of virtue. We are looking for images that could never pass muster anywhere else, least of all in our own homes. We're due for a break. When we come back, my special guest. Welcome back, Solution. Thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. Before I reintroduce my guest, because he's not a stranger to the studio, he's been here before, I want to say kudos to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force for having in custody a person of interest in the murder of Mr. Pistol, the gentleman of the small businessman, the small business owner of Marshall, I think it was, who was gunned down in his business place just a few weeks ago. And I happen to take a very personal interest, and not to say that any murder is not of interest to me, and I'm not to say that it shouldn't be of interest to everybody, but when it hits home, it takes on that other patina, this other look, this other feel. You really want to see something done. I'm very happy that the family is getting some measure of redress and some measure of comfort, knowing that the person who took away their husband, their father, their brother, their son, their cousin, their relative, their family, their friend, their neighbor, is going to be held accountable pretty soon. Having said that, what hurts most is that the person of interest is a 19-year-old. I mean, when are we going to get used to the fact that our young people, our men, much less our young men, continue to take an interest in the morbid, to continue to take an interest in things that are non-productive? I mean, what has happened to the old adage of working hard for whatever you want? You know, what would cause in the mind of a 19-year-old to think that, you know, whatever this man has, I want it. And rather than learn from him, rather than apprentice under him, I'm just going to go in and get it at any means necessary, by any means necessary. So on the one hand, I am happy for the family that they're going to get closure. But on the other hand, I'm sad and my heart is bleeding for my nation, because the future of our country, and you know, we like to just throw these things around very easily and very cliched, but it is true. These young people are the future. And when you think you're raising your kids to be paragons of virtue, and this is my phrase for tonight, paragons of virtue, and you think that you're raising them in a Christian home or in a spiritual home, or you're teaching them ethics and you're teaching them right from wrong, and you want your young girls to marry good and upstanding young men, and you want your young boys to only associate with the lawyers and the doctors and the teachers of this world. These kids, this 19-year-old Ishmael guy, he went to school with other 19-year-olds. You know, he went to school with other 19-year-olds. He commingled with them. He may have influenced them, or they may have influenced him. Who knows? We don't know. But we need to understand and to find out deep within the recesses of these guys, these people, these young people, their psyche, what has made them turn out to be these monsters. What has made them turn to a life of crime? And I know there are going to be some people out there going to say, there ain't no job. If you ain't have no job and you have to work towards that, what you're going to do? You're going to turn to a life of crime. These people are not the only people who find themselves coming from the so-called wrong tracks, you know, or being unemployed. And you don't see every but unemployed person, or any person who came from the ghetto, or anybody who came from the so-called wrong side of the tracks going into crime. So why are they so influenced to commit crime vis-a-vis the other counterparts who aren't? Last 4 weeks ago, I think April 2nd, I had with me a very special guest by the name of Callistus Jean-Louis, and he is a counselor, and we were talking about trauma, and we talked about a lot of things. He's back with me today, and we're going to be talking about trauma and crime. Good evening, Mr. Jean-Louis. Let's first just deal with the preamble and get it out there. What did you think of the preamble this evening? Let's deal with the tendency of St. Lucians to want to point fingers at so-called upstanding men and women of society who falter in the impossible pedestals that we put them on. Meanwhile, and then turning around and doing things contrary to what they seem to portray, or they seem to castigate.
Well, my stake on that is all of us as individuals, we are on equal levels. However, there's what is known as offices. When an individual finds his or herself in a position of power in terms of an office, there are certain expectations, because I'm not talking about the individual, but I'm looking at the office, and there are certain expectations of individuals when they hold certain offices, because there are lots of expectations and values that are attached to those offices, like the Governor General, PM, name it. And if you are the Chief Justice, I remember when I used to work with the judges, Justice Hari Prasad, the Chief Justices, one of the things they were said to me, because of the office that they hold, they cannot find themselves going to certain places. because anything that happens there or whatever occurs in those environments can impact on the office of the justice or the judges. So for that, if you look around, when you see a lot of events, you will not see judges and certain people. So not the individual, but the office. And in my mind, whenever the office is being brought into disrepute, despite of certain action has to be taken, because the office have to be protected, but the individual is as normal as any other person.
But what say you about persons who would now say, okay, the person, they're holding the person, not the office, the person to a higher standard that they would want to hold themselves to. Because to my mind, the person came from our communities. We are all products of our communities. So what makes that person so impervious to certain behaviors, and you it's quasi back, you can just do whatever you want, despite the fact that you have kids that are looking up to you as the first man or the first woman in their life that they have some respect for.
Yes, but you see, as long as you're going to find yourself in offices, then you need to know whether you have the value system or the values or the characteristics that would match those offices. For example, look at the Governor General. But the mere fact, any individual, and I'm talking about sits in the office of Governor General, I do not expect them to go and make political statements and all that. If you're out of it, then you can do your thing. So as I said, there are expectations, and as long that's why I draw the line. As long as the office will be brought to disrepute by the behavior and action of the individual, then action needs to be taken to protect the office. This is what we're protecting. After the person is removed, for example, the doc we are talking about, he's a normal citizen now, so he can do whatever he wants. But as long as for like, just look at me now. If I decide, man, go in the political rings, as long as I begin to do that, the hat, take out another thing, I'm expecting to behave in a particular way.
Do you think that there should be, and I'm not one for restrictions. I'm not one for restrictions. But what, too many times, and I'm not just talking about this particular administration, but other administrations, there have been so many improprieties over the years. Do you think that there should be further restrictions or further amendments to our constitution to deal with, so there's a prescription that you go to that's never changing? This happens, this is what happens, this is what's supposed to happen. An investigation is supposed to take place within 2 weeks or could be concluded within a month of the incident coming to light, and a definitive decision taken one way or another.
Yeah, well, the Constitution has put something in place known as the Integrity Commission, and that's what it is there for, but it seems to be a tiger without any teeth. So what needs, whichever government who comes in, they need to strengthen it and give it the teeth that it needs to do its work. So those matters of integrity can be dealt with an integrity commission that is neutral. It's supposed to be neutral, and so that people could trust it. But for like that matter, if it's a matter of integrity, not criminal action as far as they're concerned, but integrity, if let it be brought to integrity commission.
So you touched, and I'm happy you touched on criminal matter. But in this case, and in the previous case, and in other cases, you would find that there is some sort of criminal activity, if you want to say, that leads to these persons being exposed. No pun intended. So you would find somebody illegally tapped a phone and gathered information. And we tend to cast a blind eye to that. and say, okay, well, how could he do this? How could he do that? Yes, how could he do this? And this is where the Integrity Commission that you talk about will deal with that issue. You're a minister of government. You're an appointee of the government. You are holding office, public office at that. Whatever it is, you've done this. This is the prescription for you. So we have this prescription. But what about the white elephant in the room that nobody seems to be? Everybody's turning their head and giving themselves a stiff neck and not dealing with the elephant in the room. The person or persons who set up the setup.
Well, my thing about that is right now, the Prime Minister indicated there has an investigation. So I'm sitting and waiting to hear the outcome of the investigation. So apart from that, I have nothing else to say on that matter. When the investigation comes out, all information will be given. They said it will be made public, and then people like me in the public arena can make a decision on that.
Because I personally think that, you know, we try to be judge, executioner, and judge, jury, and executioner all in one, and we only look at one side, and then we all know there are three sides to every story.
Yeah, that's where the
But
investigation
we only
comes
look at
in.
the one side. So I'm
So if
glad
any criminal or whatever it is,
there will be a further
that will be outlined in the investigation.
And I hope,
yes,
I hope
and so
that if that were to pan out, there's a criminal activity that's taken place in this whole saga, that heads will roll, and I really mean it, heads will roll, and that the appropriate prescription is applied to this specific malady. This too often we do these things. You know, the crime is committed and we say, oh, investigation. First of all, the investigation is never completed as far as I'm concerned, because we never hear what is the outcome of the investigation. And second of all, if the investigation is completed and we're told that it's there's no prognosis, there's no cure, there's no amputation, there's no nothing that will ensure that it never happens again. We're due for another break, but when we come back, we'll talk more with my guest on the topic for the evening, which is trauma and trauma. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned to What's Happening Now with Laura. Before we went on break, I had a little impromptu discourse on the whole saga of whether persons who hold public office is supposed to be held to a higher standard than everybody else, you know. And I'm so glad before we went on break, there's something that you touched on that I wanted to repeat for our viewers, and that is when an active investigation is going on, you got to let the investigation happen. You got to let the results of the investigation be brought to bear before you can come out and talk about with any degree of openness about what is going on. And I think that's where Uvaldes shot himself in the foot by appearing on Talk last week. I mean, he had no business, because he was, you know, the word that comes to mind is prevaricating. He was just prevaricating. There's certain things that he could not touch on, and in so doing, he threw, some would say, threw his colleagues under the bus. Now, having said that, we don't want to spend too much more time on that. I want to ask your opinion, though, on the ad that we showed in the preamble with the event, the school event.
Well,
as we're talking about young people.
As you clearly stated, it was, or it is, it's still present, inappropriate, because you're dealing for a school event, and that's not the message you really want to send out. You're looking at something for adults there,
right?
And not in a school setting during school time. Yeah, that's my take on it.
And a lot of times I think people just say, you know, they want to say, kids, they kids, my lad, you're from your norm, you're this. but look, this is what we're putting out. And I know some other people are going to say, but the kids are already exposed. But just because they're already exposed, does that mean we have to now rub their faces in it?
No, but the thing about it, there are certain things that are appropriate and inappropriate, and there are certain things that we need to protect our children from. And when they come out from the stage of children, let them. But you don't just push and kick them in it. We know the realities, okay? But you don't push them as a school into that reality, because if there's a school event, whatever activity must be school appropriate and child appropriate. And certainly, I did not see this thing as little piece of boom, 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 and that has anything to do with a school setting.
And jazz, all that jazz. We're talking about jazz. You don't forget about the jazz. We're just using the word jazz all over the place. But that's for another show. I think I'm going to have Events Company of St. Lucia come in. Let's talk about all that jazz. But that's for another show. Tonight we're talking about trauma, we're talking about crime. And we know that the rates of childhood and adult trauma are very high among incarcerated persons in particular. In addition to which, criminality, childhood trauma is associated with the risk of emotional disorders such as depression and anxiety, and comorbid conditions such as alcohol and drug abuse and antisocial behaviors in adulthood. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Before we even go a little further, it'd be always wise. I did that in the previous show, but just to recall, to define what is trauma. Because trauma is an unpleasant experience, okay, that causes psychological, emotional, and behavioral disorders. Okay? Now, what research has shown, it has shown that a very significant, because you cannot be 100% in everything, but a very significant amount, in the 90s and above, of people who commit crime, there is some degree of trauma associated with this crime. While saying, the reason for saying that is, we hear and we see all the criminal behaviors that are now manifesting and unfolding in this country. Look, presently we had 2 individuals. One was stabbed last night, one was shot.
Well, there were three shots, right, and one died in Bexon.
Yes, and we keep hearing and these things are not only done only in St. Lucia. If you to Trinidad, you go to Barbados, you go to Jamaica, you go there's even little Tobago, where you hardly heard any crime. You begin to see the crime rate is beginning to pop out in those countries. And it is saying there that something significant is happening to our people. Now, the approach that governments normally take in dealing with crime, and you heard the citizenry is put more police, put
CCTV cameras.
Yeah, cameras are around, but that is the end result.
Right.
What we want is to prevent that criminal or criminality to develop in our people. And most times when we look at crime and you do what is known a historic an etiology or a background check on those individuals, okay, we will see that somewhere during those individuals' childhood, they were exposed to some sort of trauma. Let me go a little deeper. If you go to the United States, if you go to Trinidad, Jamaica, Venezuela, Colombia, what we see is the areas where we have where the people are concerned about, and you have a high level of crime, the common denominator in all of them is poverty. Okay, because we're looking at vulnerability and you're looking at risk factors, and then we will trickle it down to how trauma comes in. When an individual is poor, they are exposed. They do not have the protective mechanisms around them that will keep them secure. I'm not saying in the upper class don't have criminals, but generally it is the white collar. But the protective elements that will prevent people from being criminals, okay, are not there in terms of when you look at communities where you have a high level of poverty. Because when you do criminology, there's what is known as social control theory. It tells you that when an individual and a community can regulate itself to the point of adhering to the laws, and that's direct social control, the laws and the various mores of a country. And there's what is known as the indirect social control, where you look at housing, you look at employment, you look at supervision of children in impoverished communities. And if we take a walk in any impoverished community, you will see number one, a breakdown in the family. Number two, you will see a high level of abuse. Number three, you will see a high level of unemployment. Number four, you will see a high level of lower academic achievement, where children or these young people drop out of school. They don't see the importance of school, or they do poorly at school. You will see communities and individuals that are highly stressed. All of those factors coming together, and there are many more. You will see where the TUF president spoke about it, and this is a fact. And research has shown the young boys in those communities are exposed to a lot of violence. They see people being killed right before their eyes. They see people being shot right before their eyes. And that impacts. The first time you will see somebody being stabbed, somebody being killed, a member of the family being killed, it impacts them.
When you let's touch on this, because when you told me that you wanted to deal with trauma and crime this time around, because we promised to have you come back and deal, because I think we need this kind of intervention, let people know what's going on so we can understand and take responsibility for our actions and to try to help ourselves rather than leave it for other people. I was going through this video, and it's an American video, but it was about it from an inner city community where there were a lot of black boys, and they were interviewing and they were doing some sort of intervention with these black boys. And twice a week or 3 times a week, they have these kinds of group counseling session. And one of the things that struck me is that every single boy said the first time that they saw somebody die or somebody murdered, they were about 12 or 13, right at that age where they're becoming self-aware of they're becoming self-aware as young men. You know, they're growing from children to puberty and that kind of thing. And one of the things that struck me with every single boy that was interviewed is that they said at that time they felt helpless and they felt this hollow sense of no self-worth, that their life had no meaning. It wasn't them who was murdered. In a lot of cases, they didn't even know the person, but the person, it wasn't a family member, but the person was a part of the community. And it impacted their lives because they saw that person.
Is something that was very horrific.
And then they saw their friends and the persons that they loved and associated with crying and not being able to control. And they themselves, they lost touch of reality. Am I supposed to cry? Am I supposed to be giving comfort? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing at this point, because you're also in this transition phase. And one of the things that also came to my mind as you were speaking is, and it's basic. When you do sociology or you go to school, something that always came to the fore, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, at the base you have your psychological needs, where you need food, water, shelter, warmth.
Physical needs.
Yes, your physical needs. And then you go up, and once that is taken care of, your safety needs. And then from there you go on to the belongingness and love needs, and then you go to esteem, and then you go to your self-actualization. Now, these things seem to be, I'll tell you something. When I was at school, and I was in sociology for the first time, and I had this, and I was like, oh boy, really?
Yeah,
but you see, I was disconnected from the physiological needs aspect of it, because I was always provided for. So there was a disconnect for me. I couldn't really relate. And though it was interesting, there was not that connection. Even for the safety needs, there was not really that connection, because I was always safe. I was always provided for. I was always loved and cared for. The belongingness and love, again, as I went higher up the hierarchy, there became a more connection to the higher up I went, because the ones at the very bottom there was a greater disconnect. Right, there was a greater disconnection. But as I went, now self-actualization is where I was at. It's like, oh yeah, boy, I really want to do this. I saw my mom and my dad do this, and my aunties and and I want to emulate that, and I want to add on to that, and I want to build on that pillar that it's set, and I want to do this and I want to do that. But then when I turned around and I got to a certain age now, yes, it was self-actualization for me. When I turned that corner and I saw people now, that other people that I started associating with, that I came across, because, you know, you travel and your circle widens, and then you saw other people where the things that mattered to them most was not about self-actualization or becoming this manager or CEO or this. It was, boy, where am I going to rest my head when I leave this four walls they call school? Where am I going to get a meal? And how am I going to provide for the little one that I have?
We need to start. And this is the reason I was bringing you to all of those things, what those people are exposed to. Because as long as that basic need, food, shelter, and clothing, is not being met, what is happening now? The body now is in anxiety mood, because something wrong is happening, something unpleasant is happening to me. I am hungry. Do you know the amount of young people going to school or in communities and they have not had anything to eat? Do you know the amount of young people that do not have a place to sleep? Now, whenever you are in those positions, it affects the brain, because your brain controls your entire body. Now, when you're in the state of survival mood, because you're in survival mood, that cognitive part, because cognition takes place here at the forebrain. Okay, survival takes place here, and you call that the reptilian brain. That's what makes you like an animal. And when those young people who can't even take care, the parents cannot take care of the basic needs, at 10 years old, a lot of those children are taking care of themselves and other little siblings. They're exposed to a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I'm trying to run through all of them. Okay? And the brain now has to protect that person because so much anxiety, they are under lots of stress. And all those things are overwhelming because they've been abused as little children. They do not have any safety net, someone to show them love. So what happens now? The frontal lobe is not being stimulated enough to develop. So a lot of those people coming from those areas and those households, they have difficulty developing what is known as moral reasoning, because that part of the brain is being shut down, and the brain that is really active is the reptilian brain for survival. So in survival mode means when they're in that state, they have difficulty focusing. So when they go to school, you have not eaten, you're hungry, you cannot focus in a classroom. So they end up having attention deficit issues. They end up having hyperactive behavior. They become very hyper and aggressive because they begin to steal, because that is their survival. They become bullies. Because again, we were saying the moral reasoning is not kicking in because they are in survival mode. These children grow up, they become very angry, and when you do sociology and primarily criminology, you learn of what is known as attachment theory. And as you said, you raise up in a home where you have a lot of the protective mechanisms around you. So you learn to trust your environment. But because those children, they grow up in an environment where all what they know is hurt, pain, and anger, rejection, put downs. They are underachievers academically. So what they learn not to trust the environment. Okay? Because all what they know is pain, rejection. In developing that, anger builds in. And that's where that anger builds in. And in Freud's theory, it's called psychic energy, negative psychic energy, keep building. Now, when you look at the individual, in sociology, they said, if you want to change crime or change people, your community, check what is happening in the family. Because what is happening in the family now is a reflection of that community. Both mirrors each other. And you see this collective group, vulnerable people who the brain, the reptilian part of the brain that's what they're active. So they're very aggressive. They don't get to trust anyone. And they pull away from the dominant culture. Okay, because they don't trust the dominant culture. That's why when you go to certain places, you just look at an individual and the person saying, but what you disrespect, man, they will attack you. Okay? Because there's no attachment. Okay? And they see you as a threat because all their life, okay, they have been hurting. So in doing that now, you begin to see these communities now coming together, and they develop their own survival codes. So when you go in those inner cities, the codes of conduct and behavior is totally different from the codes of conduct in the dominant culture. They have their own way of doing things. They run their own economic system.
That's how gangs come up, because you're getting those basic needs, you're getting it
they
there.
Come together to protect themselves.
So that's a family.
Yeah. Because I cannot function in a school system to get a job. But the community caters for me. Okay, and that's where I gain respect. That's where I can move up, because in those communities, you can move up in status. And how you move up in status is, the more violent you are, the more you are respected. Okay, just check out in any one of these. Okay, so then you will hear they calling certain people shooter, and they have their codes. Those words, those calling has something behind it. And
You know, as you say this, let's delve into that a little bit, because I hear there's this little boy, must have been like 5 years, and there's a grown man, maybe like late 20s, early 30s. This little 5-year-old is calling the man Shaka, and I said to him, what is that? And he looked at me like with a smirk, and I said, do you know what that word means? Do you know what you said there? You know what it means? And he looks at me and he's like, you could tell he didn't really have a grasp as to what it was, but it's something that he picked up by the by. And I said to my mom, this is one you have to look for. You have to look at him for 5 years down the road, because he's already been, it tells you that he's already been exposed to certain things. Now, in his little 5-year-old mind, he may not be able to articulate what it is, but in 10 years, he will give you a good lesson in what that is.
Because the community rubs off, because they have the expectation, the values of the community. And this community are well protected, They protect each other. You come from the outside, or the police, or what. They're enemies. Because I can remember when I was in the police force, whenever there was a robbery of a tourist, all what you have to do is to go on, whenever we heard it, we go and stand up at the entrance at a particular place. And you must get them coming in, because as long as they go in there, they are safe. Okay? And the point that I want to try to, in those network, there's economic activity going on, and most times, the economic activity are illegal activities, because that's how they survive, because they have their own culture, own economy.
And that's why I don't understand. Like, like a lot of us, we say, but if you could put so much effort and energy into building these little communities, for illegal activity to take place, why can't you put that energy and that foresight into something positive and something good and something wholesome, and to create businesses and to create a community for your children and for the ones to come, But I think, speaking with you, I realize we're missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that is what provides the comfort, the safety in the first instance, and so you relate everything else to that community, that pivot. So everything else builds on this. It's not about, I'm not building in their minds, I'm not building a community to enhance anything. I'm looking out for my basic needs. It's a survival. It is survival, because remember, with all of what they've been faced with, the shootings, all of that, the domestic violence, the fights, the cognitive aspect of the brain, as I said, is not being stimulated, because it is continuously being bombarded with traumatic events. So the reptilian brain, the animal part of us, okay, which just focuses on survival, that is it. Because they cannot keep up at the schools, because there was a study that was done, a developmental study in the United States, where they had 3 sets of samples. One were white men who were going to college. They were middle class. 2, they were African American middle class. And 3, they were young men from the ghetto areas. And they looked at them to see how successful that they would be in life. And the researchers, when they looked at the white males who were from the middle class society, all of them went through college. They did well, and they became entrepreneurs and business people. When they look at the African American
middle class males. All of them went through college, entered into business ventures, and they did well. But the third group, they were the one who dropped out of school and end up in gangs and criminal activity. Because again, all what they are going through, again, the frontal lobe is not activated, not sensitized. So academic reasoning, moral reasoning, doing the academics, it becomes difficult for them, and they cannot see any reason for continuing something that they cannot relate to. But they can certainly relate to the activities that are taking place in their communities for the survival. Because they know for sure I can start out at that level in my community, and at the end of the day, based upon my activities, I can become a don, a boss. And that is where the status is. You can move up, you can earn money. But in order to do that now, you need to protect yourself, protect it. And that's where the guns and the weapons and all things come in.
Now, let me ask a question. Is it possible for you to regress into, so for instance, you, like somebody like me, let's use myself as an example. So like I said, I didn't have any of these physiological or safety needs because it was met from when I was born. All of those things.
Worse, yes. So you can self-actualize quite easily.
Right. So but then somewhere along the line I'm growing and I have this esteem needs, or I'm getting there and I'm in love. I fell in love with this young man, but somewhere along the line he has his own issues, and for him to feel good about himself, he has to make me feel bad. You know, there are people like that. So everything that I knew and I was safe growing up, it's now being eroded. So I'm going back down, whereas I was already at self-actualization. I'm going back down because now I have this esteem need because I need to belong and I need to love.
Trauma.
Right.
Because he's making me feel.
That's the point I'm trying to get.
Pleasant.
Right.
Yeah,
so
and you know how to deal with that.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. There's some form of trauma.
Right.
Okay, associated with that because you feel uneasy.
Right.
Okay.
So this can happen at any point in someone's life cycle. It doesn't necessarily have to be from baby birth growing up. It could be at somewhere else in the hierarchy, going back down because of that trauma, that dissonance, this disconnect that you feel, this thing of, oh my gosh, you're hurting me, I'm feeling terrible, and you're going down, and you have to now deal with. It's like having a sore, like having a cut, and it's scabbing over, and it has to heal. But you have to take care of it, and you have to meet certain requirements for it to heal.
Yeah, but because you have a good safety net, intervention can take place.
Right.
But the point is, the people that I'm talking about,
and they don't have that to begin with.
And that's where I want to end up in the intervention part. So then, because I say this thing is so complex, that those people who they need to protect that too. And how do they protect it? With the guns? Okay, and young people, and because young people are the most vulnerable set, teenagers, they're the one that most easily persuaded through peer pressure. They seem to gravitate to that type of thing because many times you come from communities, but because what you're going through, a divorce, parental going through divorce, separation, a loss of a loved one, that can seriously displace any child. Parents who are highly critical of their children. Okay, nice middle class society, but every mistake the child does is being criticized, put down, severe punishment. Okay, parenting style. When you look at parenting style, you look at the authoritarian style. It pushes that child because, well, again, the child being traumatized by loss of my parent, the divorce of my parent. My parent just lost a job. Yeah, you have a nice home. Look now, you have just lost. It becomes very traumatic, and that child now can gravitate towards pairs that you do not want him or her to gravitate to, and begin to develop antisocial behaviors. Now, people commit crimes. There are 3 types of characteristics that you will find in them. Number 1, you'll get a psychopathology. What? You get people who are going through depression because of all what they are going through. Can't find work, abuse. They feel so powerless that they have just given up because they don't feel that they can ever come out of that situation. And a lot of people in St. Lucia right now and in Trinidad too are going through depression. So many of them become suicidal because they just can't take it. Many of them gravitate to criminal activity. There wasn't a post-traumatic stress disorder, and this one was so clear after Second World War or World War II. What they observe, what the defense forces, the American defense forces realized that the people, that the soldiers who came back to America, came back to their family, they became violent. They become abusive to their spouse and their children, and many of them kill the spouse. And if that was not done, there was a high rate of separation and divorce. So when research was done into that, they realized that when soldiers are exposed to these killings and horrifying circumstances, it impacts the brain because the brain records it. And what happened when something can trigger that memory of the violence, and what you see, that this individual may see you as one of the enemy soldiers, and they can attack you. Now the same thing happens to children and adults who are exposed to violence. Many of them are reliving what they see. Many of them cannot sleep. Do you know, at Boys Training Center, a significant amount of those boys cannot sleep at night. They see things, they hear things. Okay? And if they can associate you with something that is out to get them, they will attack you because they need to protect themselves. Post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a number of them, teenagers, and during nighttime they urinate on them. Why? Because the brain now is playing out those past things. Okay, and the body is so tense, and they go into those traumatic events in their sleep, and it is so intense.
It's real.
Yes, that they urinate on them, the fear. Okay, now this is what a lot of our young people and adults are experiencing. You get this anger, because this can be reinforced over time. You've been abused, neglect, abandonment, just name it. You become angry because what? You are in survival mood. So this individual become very hypersensitive to situations, and in the blink of an eye they can attack you because they have never learned to delay gratification. They have never learned moral reason, and that is so clear at Boys Training Center. to a boy will you do him something, he'll pick up an instrument and want to hit you, and he does not have, for the present time, the ability to reason out his action in any morally acceptable way.
Now, we talked about how if you, as an adult who had all those the physical needs met and whatnot, and you experience some trauma later on, but you have that base, that safety net that you can bounce back. And this, what about those people who never had that? What hope is there in terms of intervention to get them to that point?
We come in there. I would just because I'm looking at time. Because I'm looking at the three components that you will get: the psychopathology and attention problem, name it, personality disorders, name it, to serious mental health issues. And these are the people we have walking around saying. The second one is you'll see a history of substance abuse, because coping mechanism. How do I deal with the situation that I'm being faced with? So you begin to see the marijuana use. Now I'm a supporter of decriminalizing marijuana, but that does not mean we don't have to educate people about the harmful effects of marijuana. It has harmful effects, just like antibiotics is good when you sick. Okay, but even if you take it, it has harmful effects. Okay, you get alcoholism. Okay, you get drug trafficking. Okay, and normally when you hear about these guys that one kill, they know who they and those culture, they do not want the police to be involved,
right?
Because they have their own way of doing things. So they out shooting at each, because that is what they know. That is how they will socialize. Okay. And so if that's how we socialize, we now have to re-educate them, but we'll come to the intervention.
Right.
Okay, and for time, let me just run because I call it drugs, but the drugs, any type of drugs, then you will see a behavior pattern that are disruptive. Okay, so you get the violence, the physical aggression, the violence, and people who will not think twice. There's one individual among a group of people, and they will not think twice to take a submachine gun, shoot everybody there just to get that
burning
one
down
person.
the church just to get the cockroach.
Right.
And they're buoyed by this false sense of invincibility because they have the drugs, buoying them up, So it's already there's this dissonance, and now you have the drugs aspect to it, and the violence is being is kicking in, and you feel invincible and you can do anything.
That's right. But again, in the culture, because when they do that, when you go back to the community, man,
they are applauded.
They are applauded and they are rewarded.
Yes.
They are heroes. So it encourages other little ones.
That's right.
To want to become a hero too,
Right.
because that is the way I become a hero. And now, because of time again, I cannot even deal that. So we have to look at the intervention. How do we deal with all those maladaptive behaviors? We cannot do it as I started back with the police. This is why I'm coming there. We cannot fight crime and impact crime just by saying more police officers. We have to deal with what is on the ground.
Understand the psyche.
Understand the psyche. And that is where we have to use the USAID approach in the social crime prevention program, which is very, very good. And I just wish that more of the government involvement, because it is dealing with the root of the problem, because I just described something that's very complex. And as the presence of the TUF said, we have to take a more comprehensive approach in terms of dealing with crime. We have to look at unemployment, because we know for sure disempowerment of people is a key factor. Disempowerment in terms of the high rate of poverty. You may be employed, but the salary that you take. You cannot even survive on that. And that is an outcry.
And you hear it all the time. The boys say, why are you going to work for people for $5 a day or $5 an hour, whatever it is, when I can make $5 in a minute? I can make
$5 in a minute.
You know what I'm saying?
But I have been and they tell. I remember there was a boy at Boys Training Center where his mother was charged because he did his thing and the magistrate charged her because for whatever reason, and $5,000, and the lady did not have the money. The boy absconded from Boys Training Center for about a week. After the week, he came back. He had time sell all what he had to sell to make the fight. And they tell you, why should I fight? You say Mr. Shelby, you did your bachelor's degree, you did your master's, how much money you spend in all of that and the salary you get in when I can make that in a week? What incentive do you give it? This is the reasoning. So then part of the intervention as the social crime prevention program is, you have to meet the people at the top. They will not come to us. They will not. Have you ever, unless for political favors, but they will not come to us for the intervention. We need now to bring a package that is holistic to the communities. How we do that? All children are supposed to be at school. The parents are supposed to be part of the safety net that you are looking at. So you can get all of them in a school system. You cannot have 800 children, 700 children, and one counselor.
Absolutely.
That can never. If we are serious of fighting crime, okay, we need to have a ratio in terms of counselors per students. Number two, we need to have school social workers, because the guidance counselor only deals with what happens in a school setting. We need a school social, because human services have too many issues and they can't deal with it. You need a school social workers, so they could work with the child and the family right there.
But there's a program like that going on right now, isn't
Where?
there?
School social workers? We don't have any school social workers.
No. It's not it's something, I think, with USAID.
Yes, well, USAID, but that's what I'm saying. It is USAID because they have identified 3 grassroots. These are the pilot projects.
We have a call online. Thank you for calling. You on the air.
Hello, good night,
Yes,
good night.
good night.
Hello, good night.
Good night, Consular.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm cool.
As the wind blows?
As the wind blows.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you think the music play a part in influencing in the crime culture?
Oh yes. Actually,
the type of
research has shown that. And there are court cases in America where parents and took the music companies to court saying because of the music the child committed suicide or they went on a rampage to commit crime. And the court literally found the music industry responsible. And there's a lot of scientific data to show how music, the vibration, because your brain is not a transmitter, a receptor. Yes, and it can be stimulated by vibration, and people behavior can be influenced by certain vibrations.
You know, as a little boy growing up, my granny used to tell me, if we're not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem.
Yes.
You think we all are part of the problem in one way or another?
Well, when we hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil, we're part of the problem, but we're expecting the problem to go away.
So therefore, do you think that to have our island to get back on its feet, for our people to get back to the right track, do you think we need a radical leader?
Well, boy, we need radical leaders.
leaders.
Yes, leaders, because it's not only on the government side, but we need like the churches to be more proactive. The National Youth Council to be more proactive. Just name it. Because as you said about the music, if you realize in the United States, certain music, in terms of concerts, all of them are banned because when those guys come with it, there's always violence. Because it excites the animal passion of that brain.
But do you feel that sometimes the good value has been compromised?
Yep.
To want to survive, just want to keep the head above water, so the good.
It's all about money. It's all about money. What they showed about the school. Did you see what Laura showed? The whole values and ethic have been thrown out of the window. Spirituality has been thrown out of the window. No country, and I can challenge anybody, no country can survive without value system, without morals, ethics, and spirituality.
Because what I notice, we find some of our young men do not want to embrace the gender culture because they find that gender culture is too feminine. It is not masculine enough. But the gender culture, you could be gentle and firm, huh?
Yeah.
You understand? So the way the whole lifestyle is not portraying the gender culture. And I think we are heading to. You think the young man is under peer pressure?
No. Well, there's peer pressure. There's poor mentorship and heroes, because most of them who are the heroes, drug guys, people who are violent. One man. Just look at our Afro St. Lucian. Just look at our Afro St. Lucian men. One man from American jail comes out with his pants under his knee and all his underwear, and just look at how quickly we gravitate to you watch our men. And I've never seen an Indian do it. I've never seen Indian do it. I've never seen white people do it. I've never seen Chinese do it. But it's the Afro people, just there with the pants down. I saw a father, his whole pants down, his underwear is out, and he has his holding his son. And
he's learning that.
He's learning that all the negativity. That's what we are holding on to.
But what I noticed, Councillor, I noticed that a lot of people are not attracted to educational program. They are attracted to the rural side of program that has very ferocious. And I think that we are heading into the wrong direction with that kind of culture, where you find that if it's not a rural, but rural is not there to educate you. It is more. It's
passion. Rural deals with passion. It deals with the animal passion.
Yeah. So
anything that can.
Have a great night.
Yeah. Anything that can stimulate the animal passion. If you look at all what since when St. Lucia, striptease, everyday activities. This is what they portray in the African woman and the African man. This our value system. Everything. Just look at our entertainment. It all has to do with the animal passion. That's with the reptilian brain. Nothing has to do with moral reasoning. And they cannot see what right and wrong is blurred. And this is the reason we need to look at the social crime prevention program, because this is powerful. We need to meet these people. We need to talk to them. We need something like a crisis center, because too many of our
we already have.
No, this is a private thing that is hardly functioning. Okay, it is private. Government put a little 25,000 or something Government needs to take charge of it because too many of our people are traumatized. People need a place. Many people come to me for help, but they want it free. And how do I eat bread? Okay, government should take the responsibility to have a crisis center for people who are going through crisis.
We have another call.
Could get help.
We have another call. Hello, good night, you're on the air.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Yes,
I'm
good
calling
night.
from Canada.
Okay. How is Canada?
Oh, it's nice.
Okay.
It's just raining.
Okay.
Lots of rain, no snow.
Okay.
I'm calling to talk about the crime rate in St. Lucia in comparison to Toronto. I am very, very much, disagree with a lot of things that are happening. I'm trying to find out why so many crimes in St. Lucia are unsolved and yet St. Lucia is so small. 248 square miles, and yet those crimes are unsolved. And Toronto does have millions of people, and we have so many crimes, and the criminals have to report themselves to a lawyer and then give up themselves. Why? I know that Canada is a big country, and yet it is so, it is so up there. But at least you understand something has to be done to commit the crime solved that have been done in St. Lucia. So many criminals, people committing crime and they're on the loose and nobody not hanging them. And innocent people are dying. And it's only our young children that are dying. Our children are dying. Our children are dying. Who will be the next prime minister? Who will be the next lawyer? Who will be the next doctor when all of them is dying for violence in St. Lucia?
Yes, I agree.
What is the government doing? And everybody is pointing on them, and nobody's not doing nothing.
Yeah.
Everybody afraid to talk. And in Canada, everybody is talking.
You see, because Canada has a high level of awareness and consciousness. And this is the reason I told about the longitudinal study with the white guys, the middle class, all of them were middle class. That's why employment is very important, and that's why education, because those countries are very highly educated people, and the awareness is much higher. And when any country, just check it out, any country with a high level of poverty is no different from St. Lucia. And the first thing, as you said, food, shelter, and clothing, we have to address poverty.
St. Lucia is not poor. St. Lucia is not poor.
Well, when you look at the scenario of poor, when people cannot take care of the basic needs,
yes.
things like food, shelter, and clothing, they fighting just to try to survive. We're in survival mode in St. Lucia. Too many people are poor. I can tell you so. When we go to the homes of boys at Boys Training Center, sometimes the tears, they have people for the first time with your social worker, when they say that, they're actually breaking down.
I've been to a few homes where actually I had to ask, and I felt badly about it afterwards. I had to ask where the house was, because you walked into the house, but you were like, you were still outside of the house.
Yes.
So there is some poverty.
Not some.
It's a lot of poverty.
A lot of poverty in
The
St.
thing
Lucia.
is, we are good at masking.
We're
We're good at. But thank you so much for calling all the way from Canada. I always appreciate the call, because it tells us that our expats are still listening and
Yes.
they care about what's happening at home. Thank you so much for calling.
I cry a lot for St. Lucia.
Well, all of us, because I worry about my country.
Yeah.
I worry about my country. This is the reason when I take in those opportunities because too many of our people are in survival mood. Okay, and the sad thing about it, St. Lucia is becoming heavily based on tourism, but there is no synergy between the development of the tourist industry and the community and the family, because there are too many people, families have been broken because of they are somewhere attached to that tourist industry, the shift, the splits, and you have people, in America and England, family is key. Everything in the workplace is family friendly, where they have the daycares, and when they give you a lot of time to spend, that is key.
Even with the advent of paternity leave, you know,
for both male and female.
The fathers now can spend time. It's not as much as the females, but they get to spend time.
But they're given paternity leave
time,
because they recognize
the newborns. Yeah,
the Europeans recognize key to the success of a country. Okay, is a family.
We have another call line. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Calixtus. Very passionate young man about social issues. For years, he has been crying out. Even at the condition of the boys training center for years, he has been had a burden, and I mean,
it's a burden.
Even lower than your woman.
Yeah. I'm not hearing you.
Yeah. We lost a call.
No.
Oh, okay. Still
okay.
Now I'm saying relatively young people have to Calixtus.
Yes. Boys training center is another. So, government has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring down consultants. Every consultant has indicated boys training center is not fit for humans to live. You can take all the consultants' reports. Okay, there's the Rowley one. There's Dr. Seraphine one. Name it. All of them have said BTC is not fit for humans, but there are people's children there up to now.
And I think if Rick is listening, he would concur, because one of the stories that he likes to highlight, not like it is take pleasure in, but to highlight the horrendous situation that exists is the child who was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah. Well, I was not there.
No, it wasn't during your time, and this happened a while back. But the point I'm trying to underscore is this happened a while back, and it continues today in 2019. I mean, this in terms of the situation not being fit for.
Because remember, we get those broken children, and the reports are saying rehabilitation cannot
take place there.
Cannot take place
because you're taking them from a broken
physical
situation, and you're telling you, in effect, what you're saying to them subliminally. You're telling them you are so not worth anything. I am not even going to try to elevate you out of the slum. I'm just taking you from one slum, and I'm going to put you in another slum.
You know, and that is a reflection of our priorities as a country, because the politicians do what the country tells them to do, because no one is saying, boy, we need to do something. Everybody says, yes, we will do. I have been, 12 years ago, I've been at boys training. From the time I came in, I up to now, okay, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars they gave consultants, it's saying
could have used that
rehabilitation cannot take place.
We need to stop consulting at this point, because I think the message I'm hearing from you is that consultation has taken place.
But
what we need to do now is to act on the consultation. Act on it. Instead of spending monies on consultation, use that money, divert that money into at least creating a safe space. I think the call is still online, but if you need to you need to do so we can get another call, unless you have something else that you want to add.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know food, right? I mean, what you're doing is much appreciated, and you have to do what you do at your level. But that thing is bigger than us, you know, because I'm saying, and give me 2 minutes, Mr. Pierre. Do I have 2 minutes? Yeah?
Go ahead.
Now, what the church which burned in France, the fire, right, in France? You know, the church got burned in France, and it was the same day, a few billionaires paid 300 million euros to restore the church, right?
Yep.
But there are children who are burning with hunger around the world. Their bones are on fire with hunger. They're belly fight hunger, and there are many more billionaires around the world who can contribute to end starvation around the world, and they're not doing it. So that's a bigger picture. But you're a good night, good program, and I really want to encourage you all, do not give up. All right.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
And this is one of the hurting things, because we have children that are so broken. The boys come in there with very severe psychological issues, as we described earlier on. But the environment is not conducive for the type of therapeutic approach and for rehabilitation to take place. And yet still, because one of the things, Mr. Terrence, who was our manager, he's now at, and what you hearing from Boys Training Center, and we have not been able to stop that side, the recidivism.
All of the studies point to that. They say there's an interlink between the trauma that somebody or a faction of the society would feel or as children and criminality and incarceration.
But
that
that's
is
what
that
we-
interlink.
That is because we have never dealt with those psychological issues. Because first place, you can take the best, you can take Jesus Christ himself, put him in an environment that is not going to, it will not work. We're paying people to do something. Dr. Dukuraya, when he did his research, that was in the early 2000s, he actually said putting them there can be worse off. Okay? Worse off. Because you do not have the type of structure that will allow it. I remembered we had a workshop at Obey Seraphim. We brought a lady from the United States. And before she said anything, we had our PS there. And she said, Mr. PS, I just like to say something. I have been all over the world. I have seen all types of detentions, juvenile rehabilitation centers. But what I saw up there looks nothing like a juvenile rehabilitation institution. Donovan Williams was the PS. Okay? But yet still, we're recycling something that we know will not work, that we know will breed criminals, okay? And we are saying nothing and doing nothing because we are dealing with a national security issue.
Right. So we're out of time on that national security issue. We're already 15 minutes out. Final words, and again, it's like the conversation. It's just scratching the surface. The conversation has only just begun, and I personally, I don't know for you, I personally look forward to continuing that, scratching deeper and deeper beyond just the surface, and perhaps presenting some sort of workable solution that can perhaps touch the minds and the hearts and, of the legislation, and to actually put action, not just spending the dollars to consult, because we're always hearing about consultation.
Oh yeah, lots of money.
In this case, what I'm hearing is that the consultation has been done. So let's move on
Numerous
beyond.
times.
Let's move beyond. Final words from you.
I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to at least continue that conversation on trauma. One thing that I really would like to see, number one, for the removal of Boys Training Center from where it is, and to give the boys an opportunity to experience something that is different, something that is caring and embracing. Number two, I would really like to see a crisis center be established by the government, so that people who are going through traumatic experiences can come and get help. And finally, the third one, I would really like to see family resource centers be developed throughout the communities. So then a lot of intervention and parenting training and a lot of the support mechanisms, protective mechanisms can be put in place. If somebody is working at a hotel nighttime, you can bring the child there. The child can get proper supervision, and when the parent come from whatever time, the parents and the child transported. We need now to start taking a module from the Europeans and those places, because if we protect the family, if we strengthen the family, then the community will be impacted. If the community is impacted, then we impact our country. Because all what we're talking there, we're talking about national security issues, and we're talking about safety issues, and we're also talking about issues that impact our economy.
Thank you so much. We have to end here. Senusha, this is just the beginning. We have to keep the discourse going. We have to talk about, and I'm so sorry, I have to apologize because we didn't officially open the lines, but I felt that there were a lot of issues that we had to discuss. We had to touch on all of the issues, even in the preamble, even in discussing the segue that we had. I think these are very important issues that we need to discuss. So very sorry that we didn't officially open the lines, but I promise that the next time we have another part of this series, we will endeavor to open the lines and to get your feedback, and so we can hear, and our leaders can hear what you have to say on the topic of trauma, how it breeds criminality, and how it can breed other things like we talked about the last time, suicide and abuse and that kind of thing. Thank you so much for staying tuned. Until next time, adieu.